The standard memory test your doctor gives you at your annual checkup is not designed to catch the real problem. And for millions of people over 60, it is silently giving them a false sense of safety, while the most important changes in their brain go completely undetected. I realize that is a bold thing to say. Your doctor is not your enemy, and I am not here to tell you that. But there is a shocking gap between what that office test is actually measuring and what the latest brain science says you should be measuring. And that gap may be costing you years of healthy, sharp, independent living. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why the standard test falls short, what it is completely missing, what researchers and specialists have now revealed as a far more accurate picture of brain health, and what you can do starting tonight to get a real, honest read on where your brain actually stands. Stay with me through every minute of this, because the information in the second half of this video is the part almost nobody is talking about, and it could genuinely change the decisions you make about your brain for the rest of your life. If you are between 60 and 72 years old, and the idea of losing your memory, your independence, or your ability to recognize the faces you love keeps you up at night, then what I am about to share with you is exactly what you need to hear. Let's start with the scale of what we are actually facing here, because I want you to understand that you are not alone in this fear, and your concern is completely justified. The Alzheimer's Association estimates that 1 in 9 Americans over the age of 65 is currently living with Alzheimer's disease. 1 in 9. If you think about 9 people you know and love who are in that age group, statistically speaking, at least one of them is already in the early stages. And there is a very real chance they have no idea, because the standard tests they have been given told them everything looked fine. What makes that number even more alarming is what researchers call the silent decade. Studies published by the National Institute on Aging have confirmed that the biological changes associated with cognitive decline begin accumulating in the brain an average of 10 to 15 years before any symptoms become obvious enough to be noticed in daily life. 10 to 15 years. That means someone sitting in a doctor's office today, passing a standard memory screening with a perfectly acceptable score, could already have a decade of quiet, undetected brain changes building beneath the surface. And yet they leave that appointment reassured, without any reason to change a single thing about how they are living or protecting their brain. And here is a number that will put all of this into sharp relief. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control, approximately 80% of adults over the age of 65 report that their primary care physician has never discussed cognitive health monitoring with them in any meaningful depth beyond a basic screening question or two. 80%. If you are over 60 and you feel like your brain health is getting far less attention at your annual checkup than your blood pressure or your cholesterol, you are not imagining it. You are part of a very large, very overlooked majority, and today, that changes. Now let me tell you what the standard test is and why it is fundamentally not enough. The test most commonly used in primary care offices is called the Mini Mental State Examination, or doctors sometimes use a version called the MoCA, which stands for the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. These are paper and pencil style tests. Your doctor asks you to remember a short list of words. You draw a clock face. You answer questions about the date, the year, where you are. You repeat a sentence back. You name some basic objects. In total, the whole thing usually takes between 5 and 10 minutes, and it produces a score out of 30 points. The test was designed decades ago primarily to catch moderate to severe cognitive impairment, meaning problems that are already significantly affecting daily life. It was never designed, and was never intended, to detect the early, subtle, preclinical changes that happen in the brain years before someone's daily functioning is visibly affected. But here is the problem. Over time, that test became the standard routine screening tool used for virtually everyone over a certain age, regardless of what it was actually built to catch. And so millions of adults walk into offices every year with real, early, meaningful changes happening in their brains, score a perfectly normal 27 or 28 out of 30, and are told their memory is fine. Go home. See you next year. That is not the doctor's fault in most cases. A 10-minute office visit leaves no time for deeper evaluation, and the medical system has not built efficient infrastructure to do anything more. But the result is that the very window during which intervention would be most powerful, those early years when the brain is changing but still has enormous capacity to respond, gets quietly closed while everyone waits for something more obvious to show up. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is what the standard test is completely blind to. The brain does not decline in a single uniform way. Different people lose function in different regions first. Some people's first signs show up in processing speed, the ability to take in new information and respond to it quickly. Others first show changes in what researchers call executive function, which is your ability to plan, organize, manage multiple pieces of information at once, and make sound decisions under mild pressure. Some show early changes in spatial reasoning, in verbal fluency, in the ability to shift attention from one task to another. These are the functions that, when they quietly begin to slip, change who you are in the world, your confidence, your independence, your feeling of being fully yourself, long before you ever fail to remember a word on a 3-item list. And virtually none of those functions are meaningfully tested by drawing a clock and repeating 3 words. This means that for a specific type of person, an educated, high-functioning adult in their 60s who has spent decades building what researchers call cognitive reserve, the standard test is even less useful. People with high cognitive reserve can compensate brilliantly on simple screening tests, while the underlying changes in their brain continue to progress completely undetected. The very people who are most capable of passing the test with flying colors may be the most at risk for receiving a false sense of security. The warning here is not just that the test is imprecise. It is that for educated, health-conscious adults, exactly like the people watching this video, it may be the least reliable. Now let's talk about what your doctor isn't telling you, because this is where the science gets genuinely exciting and also genuinely important. Over the past 15 years, researchers in neuroscience and cognitive aging have developed a much richer, much more nuanced understanding of how to assess brain health in ways that are actually predictive, meaning they can identify meaningful changes years before those changes would ever show up on a standard office screening. And what has been revealed through this research is that the most valuable signals of brain health are not about what you can remember in a quiet room with a piece of paper. They are about how your brain performs under real-world conditions. A landmark study from the Rush Alzheimer's Disease Center followed hundreds of older adults for years and found that measures of processing speed, working memory, and what they called episodic memory, the kind of memory that connects details to context, like remembering not just what you did last Tuesday, but where you were and how you felt, were dramatically more predictive of long-term cognitive outcomes than performance on standard screening tools. The people who showed early, subtle declines in those specific areas were the ones who were most likely to experience significant cognitive change over the following decade. And those subtle declines were completely invisible on a standard office screening. A separate breakthrough set of findings from the University of California, San Francisco, showed that self-reported changes in cognitive function, meaning changes that the person themselves noticed before anyone else did, were actually significant early signals, not anxiety or hypochondria, as they are sometimes dismissed as being. If you have noticed that you feel slightly slower processing a busy conversation, or that you need more time than you used to in order to learn something new, or that keeping track of multiple things at once feels more effortful than it did 5 years ago, that is information worth taking seriously. Your instincts about your own brain are more sensitive than a 10-minute office test. Trust them enough to act on them. So here is what you can do. And I want to be very specific and very practical, because the solution I am offering you is not about fear. It is about taking back control. There are 3 things you can do starting tonight and this week that will give you a far more honest, far more useful picture of your brain health than any standard office screening. The first thing is to take a free, validated online cognitive assessment that tests the specific functions the office test misses entirely. The Cambridge Brain Sciences assessments and the Brain HQ platform both offer testing that evaluates processing speed, working memory, attention, and reasoning in ways that are genuinely sensitive to early change. These are not games. They are research-grade tools used in actual clinical studies, and they are accessible to anyone with a computer or a tablet. Spend 30 to 45 minutes on one of these assessments. Write down your scores. Take it again in 3 months. What you are looking for is not perfection. It is your personal baseline, and any meaningful change in your own scores over time is far more informative than a single office screening number. The second thing is to start tracking what researchers call functional indicators in your daily life, because these are the real-world signals that matter most. Begin keeping a simple journal. It does not need to be elaborate, even a few sentences every few days. where you note things like how easily you followed a complicated conversation, how quickly you learned something new, whether you felt mentally foggy or unusually sharp, how effortful it was to switch between tasks. Over weeks and months, that journal becomes a personalized record of your brain's actual real-world performance, which is infinitely more valuable than a score on a test you take once a year under artificial conditions. The third thing is to have a genuinely different kind of conversation with your doctor, one where you come prepared. Bring your online assessment scores, bring your journal notes, ask specifically about referral to a neuropsychologist, not a brief office screening, but a full neuropsychological evaluation. A neuropsychologist spends between 2 and 4 hours assessing cognitive function across multiple domains, using tests that are specifically designed to catch the early, subtle changes that matter. If your doctor tells you there is no reason for that kind of evaluation because you seem fine, you now have the information to explain clearly and confidently why fine on a standard screening is not the same thing as fine. You are not being difficult. You are being an informed advocate for your own brain. You can start this tonight. I also want to say something directly to you about the fear underneath all of this, because I know it is there. The reason this topic matters so deeply, the reason you watch this far, is not just intellectual curiosity. It is because your independence, your ability to know your own mind, your confidence that you will remain fully yourself as you age, those things are precious to you. They are worth protecting with everything you have. And the first step in protecting them is getting an honest, accurate picture of where you actually stand. Not a reassuring score designed to rule out crisis, but a genuine, detailed map of your brain's strengths and its areas of early change. Knowledge is not frightening when you know what to do with it. Knowledge, in this case, is the most powerful protection you have. If this video gave you something you did not have before, a clearer picture, a sharper question to ask, a reason to take your own instincts seriously, please share it with someone over 60 in your life right now. A spouse, a close friend, a sibling, a parent. They deserve this information just as much as you do. And you sharing this video may genuinely be one of the most important things you do for someone you love this year. And if you want to keep receiving straight-talking, science-backed information about protecting your brain and your independence, the kind of information that does not get simplified out of existence in a 10-minute office visit, hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a new video from this channel. Your brain built everything you are. It is worth fighting for with everything you have. I will see you in the next one.